right, everyone, let's make the most of our time that we have with Howard and Casey. Just want to reiterate again that this is for y'all to ask questions for them, because I don't know if y'all have been to conferences before where you kind of sit through like long presentations and you just have these like questions that are burning that you have to wait until the very end to ask, and then there's not a lot of time to ask them. So when we were playing this, we were like, hey, how can we make this like most practical and applicable to Harris County as possible? And also like easier ask for people who are like super busy and their job is like not making presentations all the time. And so yeah, if anybody has like a burning question to start off with, then we can just hit the ground running. If not, like we can kind of, I can ask some questions that I get a lot from folks that are interested in like NRCS cost share, and we can kind of go from there. So does anyone, based on kind of the introductions this morning, have anything that they want to kick this off with? And are y'all fine standing? Because you're welcome to sit.
Yeah.
And if you, like, while we are talking, if you have burning questions that come up, please do not hesitate. This is very informal, so we'll answer them as they come up as well. But I think Sunshine's got a question to start us off.
I would like just a general overview of what is the cost share program, because I don't know.
Yep, so all this information that I can give you is also available online. So if you go to NRCS.gov. So we are a government agency. We're under the United States Department of Agriculture. So we primarily have cost share for two different programs. North Carolina for 2026, we got $33 million for our EQIP program, which stands for the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. So that's the type of program that Howard would, if he wants a high tunnel, that's the program that you would apply for that. We got $19 million in North Carolina for the Conservation Stewardship Program. Now, that program's a little different. It's, you have an established operation, you're doing great things already, but you want to take your conservation to the next level. So the Conservation Stewardship Program is a 5-year contract, and it does pay a minimum of $4,000 a year for the 5 years. So that's $20,000 that you can invest back into your farm, and it's just for being a good steward of your property. And you do have to do a couple things, like if you're doing a single species cover crop, you say, you know what, I'm going to do multi-species because of pollinators, because of soil health, then that's an option you can do with your CSP. So, but our website, you go to NRCS website, they will outline our cost share programs, you can see cost lists, and that is all public information. Thank you.
You said like you have to be an established operator already to qualify for that. Is there like a number of years that's required?
So NRCS, we don't look at your crop history or EQIP. So if you start like a few beds and you start your crop production, you're eligible for our ethanol program right away. Now CSP does have some stricter requirements, so you have to have farmed 4 out of the last 6 years in the 6 years prior to December 19, 2016. So it's very specific. We haven't gotten a new farm bill, so that's why that weird requirement is still in here. So that's just for CSP, though. It's EQIP, so if you need waterers for livestock, if you need a diversion, if you need a high tunnel, that is something that we can do if you start tomorrow.
What does that high tunnel process look like after you've been approved?
Yeah, so I would like to just first by saying you need records set up with the Farm Service Agency. So we're sister agencies, more like a distant cousin. I don't know half the stuff that they do, but you definitely need records set up with them first. So you need a farm and tract number, you need HEL determination, so that's highly erodible land. Because any of our programs, we want to make sure we're spending taxpayer dollars in a responsible way. So you do have to meet certain requirements. If you're going to plow up and down your field till the snot out of it, that's really not the best use of our resources. So there are certain parameters that you do have to work in with that as well. But that's the first step, setting up with the Farm Service Agency. then submitting an application. And as I mentioned earlier, we are also a public service, so you can just have me out just to look to see if you're doing it right or if you have any issues. We can come out and look at that too. But usually you submit an application. I would process it. We do have batching deadlines. So if you apply today, we'd be looking at it for 2027. It's a blessing and a curse. It gives you a year to get everything up and running, and then we'll come out next spring to take a look at it. So
Is the application online?
It is online. I'm also going to take whoever wants an application, I'd be happy to email it to you as well. So, yes.
I just wanted to clarify something. I don't know if I totally understood what you said about the CSP. So you were saying 4 years prior to 2016, so that means you would have had to have been operating farms in 2012 to qualify
Or out
for
of the
that?
last 6 years, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was not sure if I understood.
And I do want to defer to Howard, so he's actually gotten an high tunnel through our program, so I want him, because I only know it from the paperwork perspective, so I want you guys to know it's not all sunshine and roses. Sorry. But there are some, it's paperwork, it's the government.
Yes.
It's not always pretty, so.
So I can speak to the process, and Casey's talking about that process. For example, if you were to sign up, let's say now, then the technical process in terms of like starting for her to come out would be 2027, and this will give you the rest of the year to get your ducks in a row. So, for example, make sure that you have that relationship, with the Farm Service Agency, your track number, your farm number, record keeping, which they require you to report on an annual basis. And then, that information gets tied over to the NRCS. So therefore, when they look at the records, say, okay, this person has been established, and all of the data is there, the track number has been identified, because these resources aren't necessarily tied to you as a business or your particular business entity, but it's tied to that tract of land. And so that's how the record keeping is done. And so for us, we applied in 2022. Then the agent was Brent Boak. He has since then retired. Then Brent came out that spring of 2023. For us, the process was pretty straightforward. We didn't have any hiccups. I was looking at the records last night through farmers.gov, which also will be part of the process today. Because back then we were still doing a lot of things on paperwork, and all the information is now online portal that you can have access to that and also apply to farmers.gov. Yes.
You said it's tied to the tract of land. Is there an acreage? Is there a certain amount of acreage that's tied to that?
Not necessarily. From my experience, we are occupying a 9-acre tract, and so the main thing is having a farm number.
Yes.
And so once you have a farm number associated with that land, so you may have 3 parcels of the land that you may farm on. As long as that particular land has a farm number, when you do reach out to the NRCS, they can say, okay, what is the tract and / farm number that's associated with where you want to get these resources.
And there is no acreage requirement at
Yeah.
all. So if you're producing in your backyard, FSA will delineate the part of your yard that you're using. So if you want like a 20 by 60 high tunnel, if it'll fit in your backyard, that's something you can apply for through our program.
As far as getting that farm number, what's the length of time on that process? I'm fairly certain we have one, but I'm not at that level of the business. But
I think it was under 30 days. It's a straightforward process of just, going in and, they identify the tract. And I think today with more technology, it's a really fast process.
I would say call first. We are all short-staffed.
Yeah.
We applied for one last summer and still haven't gotten an answer yet.
But it was right before the government shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
If you email me, I can check on that. You're in Orange County?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would actually go to the FSA office and actually speak with Kelly, who was here this morning.
Yeah.
She's very good. But I would say be persistent in the process. Reach out, hey, what is the latest? What's happening there? Because oftentimes, it may be an issue with maybe another agency or so forth. So it's like getting that constant communication and to make sure that, you're aware of
And
what's
you can always
happening.
look up and see if you have a farm tract. Your name and your
And that's another thing too. So most tracts of land already has an existing farm number. And so I learned that the hard way when we first applied for our property where we lived and realized that, okay, the previous landowners generations ago had a farm number and it stays under that farm number. So until we applied, as the new occupants of that land. And then now they came in and the section of that land and gave it a specific farm number. And so then we were up to date in terms of like who we were occupying that particular key piece of land. So that's a good tidbit there.
So, I think we started saying about high tunnel, but, you said, crossing the ground, does that mean that, I guess we were kind of under the impression that there's no real, like, funds available for, like, true startup funds, but are you saying you don't have to have even, like, sold anything, like, to?
So we do not look at your, like, they call it, what is it? When you file, when you have farm income. Gosh, it flew right out of my head. Yes, Schedule F. So you don't need to turn any of that stuff in for us. Now, soil and water, Jessica Perrin and everyone at the Orange County Soil and Water, you do have to have that for them. What I need to see, the farm record set up with FSA, and when I come out there, I want to see pretty beds with stuff growing in the ground. And the government has a lot of rules, so, and we will explain all of these to you. So like for high tunnels, for example, raised beds can't be greater than 12 inches. So you can be growing in raised beds, but if it's over a foot, that's not something we can pay for. It does have to be in the soil profile, so it can't be potted plants. The high tunnel, once you purchase it, it has to be at least 6 feet in the middle. So little things like that, but you will know all that before you enter into a contract with us, because I will sit down, go through more details than you want to know about your contract. So we don't want to surprise anyone. I don't like surprises, you guys don't like surprises, so you'll know more than you want to know before you sign it.
Casey, something that we hear a lot related to that is, I think farmers come to NRCS expecting to sort of choose from a grab bag of conservation practices, of which there's over like 170, I think. But my understanding is that y'all approach it from the perspective of resource concern. So maybe could you talk about like kind of the history of the agency and why y'all come to it from that perspective and like what that means for farmers?
Yeah, awesome. So who knows Hugh Hammond Bennett? Okay. Well, he was a gentleman back in the 1930s-ish. I'm out of dates. So his love was the soil health. It was during the Dust Bowl, so all this soil, we were tilling the snot out of everything. So you had all this dust coming up, and everyone was just decimated. Their farmland, it was being eroded at such a high rate. There was no organic matter. Farmers had to just keep moving west in order to try to find more productive land. So they'd come into an area, they would till the snot out of it, but that organic matter takes a little bit of time to go away. But over time, you're just left with bare soil again. So he created the conservation districts, and that's when the Soil Conservation Service was born, because they realized, hey, the productivity of our land is important, soil health is important. So that's where our agency was born. The years down the road, it turned into NRCS, but basically our whole mission is to make sure your land stays productive, make sure it's sustainable for your future generations, and that you can make a profit at the same time. So we try to combine resource concerns with profitability to kind of bridge the gap in between both. And as we're learning, like, it is hugely important, your soil health. Like, you increase your water holding capacity, organic matter holds nutrients. Like, there are so many reasons to do it. It's just, we offer a carrot. That's what our financial assistance programs are. So we're like, if you're willing to do this, that might cost you a little money otherwise, or is like a barrier to entry, we will offer you cost share to help you do it. So that's kind of the basis of our agency. So if I come out to your property and it's an absolutely like beautiful wildlife habitat, I might say, you're doing everything. Maybe let's look at the CSP program, and maybe we can get that habitat under a bird cycle, because this program's better for you. If I come out and there's a huge gully running through your cattle pasture, and the soil's washing away into the nearest water body, which impairs water quality, you're losing the most productive parts of your soil. That's when I can come out and say, hey, EQIP, we gotta fix this. This is a problem. So that's kind of what the two programs do. One is for solving specific problems. So high tunnel would be your plant productivity in winter would be the problem there. The grass waterway is what we would do for a gully, and that would save the soil from being lost from the field. So the important part is getting us out there, because we can write a prescription for your property anyway. So whether you want to get financial assistance or not, we can come out and just say, hey, it's looking good, or maybe you should work on this. That, like I said, that's a public service that we offer. But we do also offer financial assistance as well.
Do you have anything in terms of, the land that we got was more like traditionally farmed, like heavy use of herbicide?
Yeah.
Do you know any programs for like transitioning away from those heavy soil?
Yeah.
Anything like that?
Definitely. So through the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and then I do want you to talk about the downsides of NRCS too, because I know it sounds great right now. Yeah, a lot of good stuff, but also bad. So we have something offered through the EQIP program. So we also pay for plans on your farm. So I'm not a specialist in a lot of things. I have to have my hands in a lot of buckets. So if you're like, Casey, I want to transition to organic, I want to build soil health, I want to do all this stuff, I'll say, great, I will help you pay for an organic transition plan. And then I will provide money to have you go out and hire someone who does specialize in this to write the plan for you specific to your property. I'm not a grazer, I have a miniature dachshund, but that hardly eats my lawn, so I can't write a grazing plan either, but if you want a grazing plan, I can say, okay, I'm gonna give you money to go find someone to write it, because I can't do it. So that's like, and I can also come out and say, there are things I can do, but if you wanted like a whole comprehensive plan, that's how I would go. But if you have me out, you're like, okay, what crop rotation can I use? Like, okay, you can use this. Let's get some mulch in here. Let's use cover crops during the summer. Let's use cover crops in the fall, because that's going to build all of your soil organic matter. So.
What is it?
Sorry, I just want to make sure other folks also have a chance to ask questions.
Casey, how busy are you?
Hold on, I'm sorry. If you haven't asked a question, please raise your hand,
Yeah.
because we want to make sure to get to everybody. Go ahead.
In terms of providing those funds for going out on contractors for those types of services, as a government agency, do you have restrictions of preferred vendors for some of those services, or is it like you have to send it out for a certain amount of bids? Like, how does that work?
So no, we don't work like Orange County. So in Orange, the Soil and Water District, you have to provide 3 bids.
Okay.
What I will do is say, here's a list of people qualified to do it. I can't recommend anyone on this list. I would recommend calling around, finding who is the cheapest or who is most aligned with your stuff. And I will have my checklist saying, yep, it meets all requirements. After they turn the plan in to me, if it doesn't, I will send the plan back to them and say, try again. So.
Casey, how busy are you? Is it like get on your calendar a couple months from now you come, or what?
So I cover 6 counties. I do have 2 staff. We just lost a few with the whole government shutdown and the DRP stuff that happened, so we are very busy. I would always recommend just sending me an email or giving me a call, and I will try to work with you to come out, but like all the government agencies, I would definitely call and set up an appointment. And we'll see if we can get you in.
Let me take your question. I also want to add this to touch on your question. With so there's specialists, that provide, these contracts. So they're contract specialists, for different areas. Like Casey said, there's a list of those folks. But there are a few nonprofits, CFSA and RAFI, that also have contracts with NRCS to do certain implementations that are of the NRCS programs, and they provide technical assistance, and some of these things are administrated to these third-party contractors as well. So there's a lot of resources out there, but I think once you get in contact with Casey, she will give you that overall blueprint of where to go and who to go to for this stuff.
Does NRCS subsidize?
Sorry, let's raise hands just to make sure everyone can.
I'm just curious about with the EQIP program.
Yes.
And specialty crops that
Yes.
qualify or don't qualify for the high tunnel. Are there certain, does it have to be food? can it be, I know specialty crops can be cut flowers, but can it be specifically native plants?
So from my interpretation, understanding the experience that Casey can add to this is that it's not necessarily about the crop, it's about do you have the space that meets the criteria for what you want to do. So when they come out, if there's space that, okay, this is a grade, I think, with less than 5%, in terms of like the grade for the land, it's ready for a high tunnel, you've identified the size you want, and you may just have some cover crops growing there. So it doesn't have to be pretty vegetables, even though Casey likes to see pretty vegetables. Right? But it could be a simple cover crop that's there, and of course your plans is to grow flowers, herbs, or specialty vegetables, right? And so that's I would say the baseline of the requirements.
I would say technically in the standard, it has to be an annually planted commodity crop.
Oh, okay.
It has to be planted commodity
Yeah.
crop.
So,
So where's the borderline when it's more of a nursery than a farm? Can it be both?
so I will tell you right now, there are shades of gray.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yes,
Just trying to figure
Yeah.
that out.
so
Annually?
commodity,
Yes. Got it.
So vegetables do fit in that, right?
yes, yeah,
But you were saying containerized plants
or not.
would not qualify.
Right, it has to go in the ground.
It does, it has to be grown in the natural soil profile.
This is kind of a specific question. We don't currently have a crop grow program outside of a small garden that's for personal use. We do livestock, and we've done that for about 8 years. We have a specific situation where we want to provide specific products for, let's say, like a wholesale restaurant, or a restaurant that can be wholesaling too. Let's say like salad greens, for example, where a high tunnel, even though we don't currently have that program set up, we know that economically we need to be able to provide those greens throughout the winter time as well to make it viable to maintain that wholesale account throughout the year. Would that be, not having that grow program going into this process of trying to get high tunnels built? Is that something that we need to kind of try out on our own first before we go into that, I guess? Or is there a way to kind of simultaneously be working with y'all on getting high tunnel set up while we're also getting that program off the ground, or that section of our farm off the ground?
So what I would say is when we come out there, we want to see something in the ground.
Yeah.
Does that mean your application won't be ranked? I'll still rank it. Now, high tunnel process, which I'll let Howard touch on a little bit more, usually takes about 3 years
Okay.
for you to get a high tunnel. So I would recommend you apply 2 years ago. But, since we're here right now, maybe today would work, but.
Can you talk about your experience, Howard?
Yeah.
Yes, so that's the reality of it, and one thing that Casey said is ranking, which we'll stick a pin on that, and Casey can get into details of what ranking entails, so you can see where you are in terms of ranking. And so, gentleman was mentioning that he wanted to do some produce. So I would recommend, yes, make sure that you have some produce in the ground. So start that process, start the business, stacking enterprise of adding vegetables to your operation. Have that place prepped, get your application in. And like I said, it can be up to a 3-year process because there are other people who are also applying. So it's a competitive process, and there's a limited amount of funds. So therefore, depends on how you rank in terms of if you're ready, there's crops on the ground, everything is there. It's much easier for Casey to come out and say, okay, check, and then when she goes back and tallies the score, she's like, okay, this person ranks the highest, and then maybe out of 20 applicants, and funded maybe come down to say 5 or 10, then these people who rank the highest, and of course then there will be feedback, after that round, that's why I say continue to communicate with her or whoever it is. Okay, what happened this round? Well, the ranking was this. Okay, how can I improve my ranking? And then we'll get better feedback for the next time and so forth.
He's hired. You want orange
I might need a job soon, but
So I currently have hoop house and grow ginger in it, and I want to get a second hoop house. So and the land is right next to that. Would I have to have that land cropped and have that land, like growing? That's where I need to have stuff in the ground.
Yes.
And then,
yeah.
oh, okay. So it's not like the one that to show that I already know how to do this.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, if I go out there and just see lawn, I'll still rank your application. But as Howard just mentioned, when I go into my system and it asks what crop you're growing, if I say grass, you're not going to rank as high as
Right.
someone who's
I see.
growing tomatoes.
So ideally, right, it's like this. The whole goal of the program is to conserve the land. And so we know that erosion, heavy rain, things like that, especially in this area, does that. So when she comes out and she sees, okay, you have lettuces, greens there, okay, this can be protected because under protected cover, you're going to get much better yields in terms of ability to resist diseases. And also too, with heavy rains, you can now mitigate that with this tool. So if she comes out and says, okay, this needs to be protected, so your rank is going to be much higher because you have the elements that are required to be covered. Yeah. So it's okay, that fits the bill. Let's get this thing protected.
So I'm gonna ask you guys a question, all right? It is graded. So if you have lawn right here, like just nice sod, or you have a bed with tomatoes and bare soil, if you have a large rain event, which one is going to be better protected? The sod. So as Howard's mentioning, like I'm spending taxpayer dollars. So if someone comes up to me and says, hey, I gave you this money, why are you, giving money to someone to grow grass that grows outside? So that's kind of the rationale you need to be thinking about. Like, if you don't have a resource concern, like, I'm kind of out of luck.
Can you elaborate? When you said that you can have someone come in like third, does it always have to be third party, or like if you have like experience with cover cropping or soil amendment and you just need help paying for seed or something like that?
Oh, I can do that 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just the very specific, like grazing things. Like I said, my dachshund doesn't eat a lot of grass, so I can't do that. Also, we can do some things in-house, like nutrient management plans, work with Jessica. And so here's Jessica Perrin from Orange County Soil and Water. She's awesome. But we can sometimes work together to write things in-house, but it's really who has the expertise. But cover crops, easy. We can definitely write a contract.
Just like can you broaden this to include forestry stuff? So now I'm not growing crops to feed others. I'm got a longer term look. So.
And Peter's awesome. He has some cool salamanders on his property that I'm excited to see. So. Yeah.
But what are they still in the same EQIP program, or are those different programs?
So it can be both. So if you have forestry, you have to have owned the property for 10 years to participate in the CSP. But in terms of resource concerns, so still looking at it from that perspective, wildlife is a resource concern. If we have that sod and you're like, I want bees, I want monarch butterflies, I can justify saying, okay, well, let's take that sod and let's plant a 12 species mix of native wildflowers, and that would be a greater ecological service than the monoculture yard that you have. So that's kind of what we look at it from a wildlife perspective. So in Peter's situation, if I go out to his forest, and once again, I'm not a forester, so the Forest Service has to write that. So AK mentioned earlier that she writes forest management plans. I would take the plan that she wrote, look at the property and say, oh yeah, we can do prescribed burning and we can help you pay for that. We can do thinning and we can help you pay for that. So in terms of forestry or wildlife, we can definitely help in that realm too.
Casey, one thing that we hear a lot with forestry and others, but especially forestry, is there's kind of this triangle that has to work together. There's someone in NRCS, like yourself, there's the landowner, and then there's often like a contractor. So in the case of a forestry landowner, it would be like a forester. And we've heard folks that have had kind of a negative experience with the forester that they hire because they may not be as familiar with working with NRCS or the Forestry Service. And I understand that y'all are not allowed to make like recommendations to a private contractor. Something that we try to do is connect people with foresters and other contractors that have more experience with those programs. But can you speak to kind of that? And then Howard, I'd be interested to know, like, did you work with a contractor on the construction of your tunnels or anything else? And did you run into any issues with that?
So, as I mentioned before, you will get sick of how much information I give you. We will give you job sheets. So I will, like thinning is what we need to do, if we're thinning for wildlife, for example. I'm gonna give you a sheet that says, I need your forest to go down to, 50 basal area. Your forester should know what that means. If they don't, you've got a bad forester. So I'll write a sheet that says 50 basal area, this is what we need for wildlife, or if you need to reduce your trees to 300 trees per acre. These are all, I will write a prescription, and it'll be approved by my forester at NRCS. So if I come out to your property and it's not that standard, I'm not going to pay you. So that's when, I'm not gonna talk to your forester unless you want me to and you sign a release of information. I'm gonna be working directly with you, and I'm gonna say, doesn't meet, if you wanna get paid, you need to get your forester together. So I'm basically a contract manager. I can offer some technical assistance, but I'm not gonna go out there and do the work for you. So.
So to answer the other part of your question, you talk about contractors. So for us, so part of the process also too is like now you have the funding for this high tunnel. And how many people here have built a high tunnel before? Raise your hands. Oh, we have one that's going to expensive. Okay, all right. We might want to talk to these people here. But so if you don't have someone on hand, well, you definitely have to find a contractor. And sometime Casey might have worked with someone in the past and said, hey, I'm not really recommending this person, but you might want to talk to them and see if they're available and so forth and so forth. In some parts of the state, because I've worked with other farmers, especially in the southern part of the state, eastern part of the state, and like the agents are used to, okay, we work with this person, we've gotten contracts that they use this high tunnel person over here, so that's like a local person, and they oftentimes steer them towards that person. And so that can also have its positive things and also has its challenging things around that. I can go into that detail later on. But for us, we were lucky that I'm pretty handy. And by the time I got around through this process, like I said, it's been a few years in applying and waiting. I already built several other tunnels and got the experience on how to build them. Since then, since 2012, there's a company called Farmers Friends here in Tennessee. And so we worked with them since their inception of their first tunnels, and they've built tunnels now that have conformed to the standards of NRCS, because there is a certain guideline in terms of like the heights, the type of steel and so forth. So they fitted that, and they've been a good resource where now they have contractors where they will send them out to build a tunnel and give you a price of what that's going to cost up front. And one of the challenges with that in the past, where let's say you want to get a high tunnel, and up until 10 years ago, there was nothing between a low tunnel and the traditional high tunnel, and they were very costly. I mean, back then, even at a low price, you're talking about $10,000 to $15,000. And oftentimes, the cost share program, I think, up to then was maybe $9,600. I don't know what it is today. How much is it today?
So the cost lists have changed.
It's changed, yeah.
We pay based on square foot.
Square foot, yeah. And that square foot, entails the construction and also the cost of the materials. So you may go in and say, okay, I want this 20 by 100 foot house, and it may cost this, but by the time you add in all the other costs, it's going to be, say $15,000. And but part of the process where you're only going to get half of those funds up front, and then you will then have to provide the rest of those funding to bridge that gap.
And I would just say the 50% upfront is only available to certain, if you meet certain requirements.
Right.
So if you're a beginning farmer, socially
Yes.
disadvantaged.
Yeah.
So that's might not be available to everyone.
Yeah.
So that's just something also to keep in mind financially. Like it is a cost share program, but you get reimbursed upon completion.
Yes, so that's the part of the challenge. So a lot of people, especially beginning farmers, we're all strapped for cash. It's very challenging. Oftentimes we'll go through the process and get to the point of the contract, look at the greater details of how it's going to play out, and most folks oftentimes won't sign a contract because of that last part of it. But it's still a good resource, and I think it's a long-term thing. I think NRCS is great. That as farmers, we should be thinking, I would say, 10 to 20 years depending on where we stand today, and see this resource as a part of us improving the quality of our farms over a long-term process.
And I will say, so you are entitled to the 50% if you are considered a beginning farmer. So that's if you've been farming for 10 years or less. Like I said, I'm not going to look at your taxes, your Schedule F. I'm not a tax person. But it is also taxable income, everything that you get from the government, so that's also something to keep in mind. And David Brooks had a question, so I wanted to.
Yeah, I wanted to ask some specifics on pasture grazing and the process.
Well, I believe did we talk?
Yep.
Yeah.
You should have my information.
Yep, so David is one that I'll be going out to take a look at his site and discuss the grazing stuff. So depending on what he has going on out there, there are two ways that we can pay for a well and a watering system for your animals. You can either exclude them from a water body, because once again, we've got to think about it from the resource concern perspective. So if your animals are in the water pooping, just causing it to be a mess, we can pay you to exclude them. And since you're excluding them, we understand that they need a water source. So we will provide the funds to dig a well. We will provide the funds to do a heavy use area and install waterers. Now, once again, this is a huge financial task, so that's something that as a farmer you'll have to think about. The other way we can pay for this system is through prescribed grazing. So if I come out to David's operation, it looks great, but all the animals just have access to one big field, I can say, okay, let's divide this up, let's pay for internal fencing, let's get some watering systems, so the animals, we can rotationally graze them, give those plants a rest, then have them go over here, and that's going to improve your feed and forage, it's going to improve animal health, your grazing utilization, it's going to improve all that. So always think, it's like, is there a resource concern? Yes, sir.
So we live in Vance County. Are these resources, are they across all of Memorial?
Yes, so Vance, I believe, is Olivia Plant, so she is the supervisor for that team. So if you want, I can give you my card and I can send the information for who covers Vance.
Thank you.
You picked one that wasn't one of my six,
Yeah.
so sorry.
So mentioned out in the main talk, the funds and the programs that are coming through regenerative
Yes.
processes. Are those going to be coming through NRCS, folk working their way down the USDA pyramid into NRCS as well?
Great question. Yes. So we have RPP funds right now. So RPP is the new program that's replacing the Inflation Reduction Act funds. So the Regenerative Pilot Program is the new program. 25% of all of the allocations that I mentioned earlier, so the $33 million for EQIP and the $19 million for CSP, are going to be allocated to that program. It's a little different. We do require soil testing in year 1 and year 5, and then you have to adopt one of the 4 practices. And I do have a list of those, there are like 17 practices. It's just a separate pool of money under both CSP and EQIP. And the main difference is that soil testing.
Is that guidance going to be up as well?
I actually have a meeting tomorrow, Wednesday.
That's
So
awesome.
hopefully I'll know more by then, but yes. And then once again, when I go out to a property, I can see like, oh, you can benefit from soil testing. Would you be interested in this program? And then we can go.
That water exclusion program, what was the, what one did that fall under?
That's EQIP.
Okay.
So you don't need the history, you don't need anything, you just need an animal and a water body.
Super, thank you.
She's federal credit card, you want to
Okay. I've been talking so much, I need break.
So another role that I also occupy, which I haven't talked about much, is I mentioned the not-for-profit RAFI, Rural Advancement Foundation International, and they're located in Pittsburgh. They offer a lot of resources to farmers, and so I am also technically a technical assistant provider. I was written on a grant through the NRCS that they administer, and so I am like a contractor through them, and I provide technical assistance. And one of the areas where I found challenges as a beginning farmer is that, okay, as we started to grow into this covered culture, there was no information from the USDA-NRCS about how to use these tools. So we can have access to resources, but how to implement some of these resources, maybe we need more information. So I found that to be my nature. So today I provide technical assistance where I come in and I work with farmers on how to grow inside of a tunnel, how to use them, how to construct them, how to fortify them, how to maximize that space, how to draw up like specific management plan in terms of like watering and overhead, drip irrigation, how to maximize the space. And also how to use some practices, like mulching, which the NRCS does support and cover as a practice, to conserve soil. So in any areas of that aspect, I am pretty knowledgeable and will share any and everything that I've learned over the years to maximize that. Yeah.
So my issue is we have a high tunnel
Yes.
and we are having issues of finding individuals that can put it together.
Okay.
You have resources for that.
Okay. So we can talk after, and I can share. There's actually one gentleman here that I know that builds them, and he contracts out to work on them. So I can get you hooked up with that information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I do also want to say, government has a lot of rules. So when you sign a contract with us, you do have 12 months to implement a practice. So if you don't, your contract is technically in non-compliance. So sometimes people run into issues with that 12-month rule, but as soon as you sign and it's obligated, the clock starts ticking. Does it mean your contract's going to be canceled or terminated? No. Unless you ask us to cancel it, like, we will try to extend it for as long as possible. But there are rules in the appendix that you will sign as part of the contract that do have to be abided by. And once again, I will go through, I picked out the most important parts. You can read it to fall asleep if you want to, but I try to go over like the key points, and that's definitely one of them. If you do have a contract terminated, you can be liable for 10% of the entire cost of the contract as administrative fees. So that's just something, like, it's not all like, I'm gonna get a high tunnel and it's going to be great. You know, life happens. You know, 12 months comes and goes. We have these crazy snowstorms. We have like these things that delay us. It's just something to keep in mind too. Like, but I always make a habit of giving you more information than you want to have. So.
Question for you, was that tunnel purchased by you or was it through a NRCS?
And it was through the NRCS.
Okay, all right, so we definitely want to talk about it to see that you're in the town in the, as Casey mentioned.
So we just have a few minutes left. I want to shamelessly plug some things that we have to offer later in the spring as well, kind of similar to Rafi. We're working with NRCS to kind of promote their programs and provide assistance. And so we have, we're partnering with the CFSA on their farm tour. On Sunday, look out for more information about like a tour within the tour that we're doing specifically for farmers who are interested in organic transition and NRCS. And so that'll be a free tour that we're doing in partnership with them. We also have a field day coming up in Marion at Wild East Farm. So it's a bit of a drive for those of us in Orange County. It's just not right here on our back step the way so many great resources are. But they have a lot of practices to show and tell about. And so that'll be a full day event, and that'll be on our website as well. We have a sign-up sheet here. So please, if you want more information about the programs that we're doing, Rafi's doing, that Casey has to offer at NRCS, fill this out and maybe make a special note that if you would like an application, we can make sure to get that to you as well. We're doing a video series, which we have Carrie here. He's on the film crew with GeoCore. So we're going to be putting that out later in the year with information about application process and different practices for mixed vegetable and row crop farmers, livestock producers, and forestry landowners. So that'll be coming out later in the year. We're developing an app for farmers. It'll be like a chatbot integrated app that we just got approved through all the bureaucratic channels, and it's actually happening. So that'll be a place where you can go and like ask a lot of questions specifically about NRCS. So that's coming up, and we will have more field days and events coming up later in the year as well. So if there is any like burning questions, we have just a minute or two for a little bit more. Otherwise, let's give a round of applause.
And also, guys, for myself, you can reach out to me at Faithful Farms. You can find us online on Instagram. or CaseyFarms.com, where we're easy to find. And I'm available, you know, I try to help folks as much as I can, because I've always had challenges, you know, with help and, you know, like as a starting farmer. So I'm just kind of just share everything that I learned, hopefully that can, you know, speed up the process for others.
I do have cards up here. You can text me, my cell phone number is on here. Email's pretty good too. You can call my office phone, you'll never hear from me. So, please feel free.
And I do have cards as well. If you have your phone, you can take a picture of it so we don't waste paper. But
I have one question. Is Parson County part of the old?
It is, yeah.
Same with Casey County, right?
Well, it's in Caswell County. If you want Person County, I have a job opening. So.
No, I got you. I don't know what's on big boy.